With only a split second to decide, Lyra turned and rushed around the back of the building. She went around the far corner just as the two guards came around to her previous position. "See?" one of them said. "I told you there was nothing. Our shift is over anyway. We are done here." "I must have imagined it," the other one said. "All right, let's go." The guards walked away, and Lyra waited a while before looking around the building. After confirming that they were gone, she retraced her steps. It was a good thing that they were changing shifts, which would make it easier for her to slip past the most heavily guarded areas without notice. It took her a while to get to the building that housed the dungeons. The place was more deserted than usual, which made it easier for her to sneak into the lower levels. The deserted hallways made the gloomy atmosphere even more noticeable, making her apprehensive of what she would find ahead. Her plan was to find Zero and Anna and speak to them so she could know what was going on. She knew it must be a misunderstanding, so she wanted to get their side of the story before she confronted Julian. Lyra's search took her to the farthest, most desolate cells in the dungeon. As she got closer, a painful cry pierced through the air, sending a chill through her bones. "Stop!" a male voice screamed. "She did nothing wrong. Let her go." Lyra recognized Zero's voice right away. Keeping close to the wall, she shuffled stealthily towards the direction of the voice. Finally, she was able to look around a corner and into the cell where they were. When her eyes finally made out the scene in front of her, her blood ran cold in her veins. She saw Anna tied to a wooden post in the middle of the cell, wearing a flimsy white gown that was stained red with blood. The dress was also torn in various places, bearing what appeared to be whip marks. Anna's head hung forward limply, as if she was unconscious. In front of her stood a male, with a familiar figure. Lyra found herself shaking her head and muttering, "Number, it couldn't be." Julian would not. Her thoughts grinded to a halt as the male turned, and Lyra got a clear look of his face. It was indeed Julian. He was holding a red-hot branding iron, which he regarded with a sinister smile on his lips. He wasn't intending on using that on Anna, was he? Was he the one who had whipped her so badly that her dress had torn? Zero was also in the cell, chained to the wall. Lyra watched him struggle with the chains around his hands and legs, but his efforts to get free were futile. "Stop this!" he screamed at Julian. "I swear if you hurt her, I'll make you pay." "Is that so?" Julian asked, turning to Zero. "So not only did you collude with a witch to ruin the royal family, you are also threatening your king's life. Do you want to spend the rest of your life down here, in chains?" "Do it to me," Zero spat. "Do whatever you want to me, but let her go. Do it to me instead, coward." "How would that teach her a lesson?" Julian asked. "Everyone should pay for their sins. Don't worry, your turn will come." Lyra could not believe that she was listening to the Julian she knew. His voice was so cold and cruel, it was unrecognizable. She knew he could be cruel. He had treated her like trash when they first met, but he had reasons to hate her. But why would he do this to his own cousin? He and Zero may have had differences in the past, but that was history now. Despite how he had treated Zero because of his interest in Lyra, Zero had not held a personal grudge against him and still helped him in running the kingdom. Also, the two of them had grown up together and had a close relationship, so no matter how Lyra looked at it, she could not fathom how Julian could treat Zero like this without batting an eye. Julian walked back to Anna and swirled the iron in front of her body. "Where should I mark her?" he asked. "Her chest or her face? The face is better, right? It'll make sure that everybody who sees her will know what a disgusting traitor she is." "She is innocent," Zero snarled. "Julian, I am warning you. Leave her alone or you'll pay with your life. Do you value the life of a witch more than that of your king?" Julian asked Zero. "As a member of the royal family, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Tell me, did she put a spell on you? I can pardon you if it turns out to be so, but if you keep defending her, I'll make her suffer a fate worse than death. You two can keep each other company here, and I'll come to play with you whenever I get bored. You are crazy. Zero spat. You are fucking crazy. I think I'll go with the face, Julian said. He used one hand to grab a handful of Anna's hair and raise her head. Count this as a favor to you, cousin. In case you are blinded by her beauty, you'll be able to set yourself free once I am done with her. Lyra could no longer just watch. She had thought at some point Julian would snap out of it, that it would all turn out to be a cruel joke. But it didn't seem so. She could not believe that Julian was capable of this. It was too much, and she could not let him hurt Anna anymore. Lyra left her hiding spot and rushed towards the cell. The door was not locked, so she pushed it aside and hurried inside right away. Julian! She shouted his name, taking his attention away from Anna. As soon as he turned from Anna and to her, she stomped towards him. What the hell do you think you are doing? Lyra thought he would engage her, but to her surprise he lurched forward to attack her. She had not expected such a reaction from him first. Maybe surprised that she was there. Why would he attack her? Because he caught her in surprise. Lyra did not react in time, and he was able to punch her, sending her reeling backwards and crashing into the cell's metal bars. Lyra touched her jaw and looked at him with unbelieving eyes. What is wrong with you? She demanded. Lyra. Zero shouted her name. You should leave. Leave. Number she would not leave until she saved the two of them. Julian rushed towards her again, but Lyra stepped aside and moved away from him. He went after her right away, and the two of them crashed against the wall. Be careful, Zero yelled at her. He has gone fucking crazy. Lyra was inclined to believe that. Julian was attacking her ferociously, as if he wanted to kill her. She could chalk up his treatment towards Zero and Anna to a misunderstanding, but why the hell was he attacking her like this? Was he out of his mind? This is not Julian? Ray told her urgently. What do you mean? Lyra asked. I cannot sense him at all, Ray told her. He looks like him, but it is not him. Has he been bewitched like Devon? Lyra asked. No. This is different. This is someone else, not Julian. I am certain. While conversing with Ray, Lyra was doing her best to fend off Julian's attacks while trying to not harm him seriously. If Ray was right, then it all made sense. She couldn't think of a reason why Julian would attack her so ferociously as soon as he saw her. Trusting Ray's judgment, she changed her tact. Rather than try to communicate to him through her mind, which was fruitless even at such proximity, she started using her mental power to control him. She also did not spare any strength in her blows, keeping in mind that she was fighting an enemy, not her mate. When she thought about the torment Anna and Zero had endured, she channeled her wolf strength, boosting the power of her hits. Between her enhanced attacks and her mental control, she was able to subdue him completely. Spotting a rope in the cell, she used it to bind his limbs together, making it impossible for him to move an inch. As soon as he was adequately secured, she went to release Anna from the wooden post. Lyra, Anna whispered weakly, trying to lift her head. It is all right, I got you. Lyra reassured her, as she tried to get the ropes undone as fast as she could. Why are you here? Anna asked. Run before he comes back. It is okay, he can't hurt you anymore. Lyra told her. I'll get you out of here, okay? Getting the ropes undone, she helped Anna take a seat on the floor against the wall. Then, Lyra turned to Zero to unlock his chains with some keys she found in the possession of Julian. Whoever that was, as soon as Zero was free, he crawled to Anna's side. He held her gently as he examined her wounds, his lips trembling with rage. I am sorry, Anna whispered. It is all my fault. No, it is not, Zero said firmly. You did nothing wrong, all you did was try to help, but he turned his gaze to the male bound on the floor. He is fucking crazy. I'll make him pay for every wound on your body. It is not Julian, Lyra told him. Zero looked at her and blinked. What? It is an imposter, she told him. I am suspecting it is the Rogue King. He has been working with the witches, so it is possible they helped him change his appearance to fool everyone. Julian would never do this. He can be cold sometimes, but he wouldn't be so cruel to you and Anna. Zero swallowed and looked at Anna. What now? If this is the Rogue King, where is Julian? What is happening out there? I am not sure yet, but when I arrived I found new guards at the gate and they would not let me in, Lyra informed him. The situation in the capital city is normal, so it appears that the pack members do not know what is going on inside the palace. I heard that the king ordered Beryl to go back to her pack. But I don't think she would have left. She must have sensed something was wrong, especially after the accusations against you two. I want us to leave here and find her so she can take care of Anna. Then we can go looking for Julian. Okay. Zero agreed. Do you have any idea where we can find Beryl? We have to get out of here first, Lyra told him, after we find somewhere safe to hide. I'll try to locate her. I should be able to do so with my wolf's help. Let's get going then, Zero said, getting to his feet with Anna in his arms. Anna needs a healer as soon as possible. She has lost too much blood. They moved slowly through the dungeons, being extra careful to not make any sound. Lyra walked ahead of Zero to check the hallways ahead, ensuring they were deserted before they went ahead. Where should we go? Lyra whispered as they took the stairs to the upper level. There is a storage building not far from here, Zero told her. It is rarely frequented, and nobody stays there throughout. I think we can get there without being noticed. Okay, Lyra told him. Once we get there, I'll try to locate Beryl. They walked through the door at the top of the stairs and came to the ground floor of the building. They had just walked a few steps towards the exit when they heard the sound of laughter coming from one of the inner rooms. They froze in their steps, listening. That is the break room, Zero whispered. Let's hurry before one of them shows up. Nodding, Lyra resumed walking towards the exit. Finally, they made it out of the building and took a path leading towards the storage building Zero had talked about. Anna, stay with me, okay? Zero whispered to Anna. Lyra looked back at her friend. Anna did not look good. Her face was pale, and her eyes had slid shut. The sooner they found Beryl, the better. When they got to the building, they found the front door locked with a heavy lock. Zero cursed and looked around. Shit, I'd not thought about that. Let's go around, Lyra said, noticing they were standing in an open area. If a guard appeared, they would have nowhere to hide. They walked around the back of the building, where to their relief, they found a wooden shack attached to the building. It looked neglected, with its door hanging crookedly. Lyra pushed it aside and it moved with a creaking sound. Fortunately, the sound did not attract anyone, and they were able to get inside safely. Inside, the shack was cluttered with all sorts of things. Lyra cleared a space on the floor where Zero placed Anna. You should transfer some of your energy to her, Lyra told him. It'll buy her some time before we find Beryl. I really hope you are right and Beryl did not leave the palace, Zero said, using his body to support Anna. I don't understand how any of this could happen. How could the Rogue King infiltrate the palace without anyone raising an alarm? When were you put in the dungeon? Lyra asked him. 2 days ago, he told her. Hearing that, Lyra looked at Anna. Had she been enduring such torture for so long? The torture started today, Zero told her, rightly guessing what she was thinking. Feeling a bit relieved, Lyra said. She is strong. I should have brought her back to my pack earlier, Zero said regrettably. If I had, none of this would have happened to her. It is not your fault, Lyra told him. She was helping with the investigation, so even if you wanted to bring her to your pack, Julian would not have allowed it. I promised to protect her, but I could only watch. Zero trailed off as his voice thickened with emotion. Now she is in so much pain, and there is nothing I can do for her. Zero had helped heal the injured werewolves at the Red Moon Pack. Then he had been imprisoned soon after coming back to the palace. He did not have enough time to recover the energy he had used, and the conditions in the dungeon must have made it even harder to regain his usual strength. Don't beat yourself up over this, Lyra told him. We'll get Anna the help she needs, and the Rogue King will not get away with this. What do you think he did to Julian? Could he? Zero trailed off. Lyra swallowed. He is not dead, she said convincingly. I would know. He would not be missing if he was okay. Zero pointed out. No, he wouldn't, Lyra mumbled. If it had been at least 2 days with the Rogue King in charge, and Julian had not shown up, it was not a good sign. Was he trapped somewhere? Was he badly injured? Lyra would have pumped the Rogue King for answers if it hadn't been imperative to get Anna help right away. Also, staying in the dungeon longer would have put the three of them in danger of being discovered. She wondered what he wanted. Did he intend on impersonating Julian forever and taking over the kingdom? Because if not, why was he keeping his identity hidden? Was he waiting for something before making it public that he had taken over the palace? If he wanted to pretend to be Julian forever, he wouldn't keep Julian alive, would he? What if Julian was really dead? Lyra kept saying she would know if he wasn't alive, but she wasn't so sure of that. She could not even sense him through their mate bond. How could she claim to know he was okay? How will we find Beryl? Zero asked Lyra. We are not her packmates, so we cannot mind-link her. It'll take too long to look around, and we don't even know where to begin. I can try sensing her with my mind, Lyra told him. If she is still in the palace, I'll find her. I think the Rogue King is using something to prevent us from communicating, Zero said. I tried to ask my Beta and Pack Elders to intervene in our case, but I could not reach any of them. Let's hope my wolf can bypass whatever barrier he is using, Lyra said. Earlier, I was able to control him. That might be a good sign. Finding a space on the floor, Lyra sat down and crossed her legs, then closed her eyes and relaxed. It took her a few seconds to get rid of the worrisome thoughts before she could start probing for Beryl's presence with her mind. As soon as she started, she felt a resistance that forced her to stop. When she tried again, she pushed against the resistance and forced through it. Not long after that, she felt a familiar presence. Beryl? She called through her mind. Lyra, is that you? Did you get back? She heard Beryl's voice in her head. Yes. Where are you? Don't come to the palace, Beryl warned hurriedly. I am already here, Lyra told her. Don't worry. I know what is going on. I am with Zero and Anna. Anna needs your help. Where are you? Are they okay? Beryl asked. They are not in the dungeon. I just got them out, Lyra said. Anna is severely injured. Where are you? Beryl asked. I'll come to you. No. We'll come to you, Lyra told her. We are not in a good place and it is not really safe. All right, Beryl agreed. Be careful. After ending the communication with Beryl, Lyra told Zero about it and told him she knew a shortcut they could take to get to her location. Is she okay? Zero asked. Yes, she is fine. Her eyes rested on Anna. How is she doing? A little better, he said. Getting up, he carried her on his back, and Lyra led the way out of the shack. From what Lyra had sensed, Beryl was in one of the older guest villas in the palace that were rarely used. The building was dark when they got there, with no sign of being occupied. They went through the back door, where they found Beryl waiting with a candle in hand. The electricity here is not working, she let them know. But I have enough candles. She led them to the room she had been using. The windows were heavily draped, which meant someone could not notice the candlelight from outside. Zero lay Anna down on the bed and stepped back to allow Beryl to examine her. how could Julian do this? Has he gone crazy? Beryl demanded, her voice filled with anger. After everything you two have done to help him, this is how he repays you. It is not Julian who did this, Lyra told her. Beryl looked at her. He was the one who sent them to the dungeon, so no matter who tortured Anna like this, it is his fault. This wouldn't happen without his permission. The one who sent them to the dungeon and who asked you to leave is the Rogue King, Lyra told her. He assumed Julian's appearance and has been pretending to be the Lycan King. This is all his doing. Beryl's brow creased in a frown. The Rogue King, Lyra nodded. Yeah, instead of bewitching Julian to act on their behalf like they did with Devon, they faked his appearance. When I showed up in the dungeons earlier, he did not hesitate to attack me, and my wolf confirmed that it was not Julian. Where is Julian then? Beryl asked, looking more puzzled. He is missing, Lyra said. After you take care of Anna, we can go find him. Beryl moved to the closet, where she retrieved her medical bag. Okay. I know Julian can be cold sometimes, but I could not believe he was acting this way. Now it all makes sense. Using her tools, she sliced open Anna's dress, revealing the full extent of her injuries. They looked worse than Beryl had thought they'd be. Fucking monster, she mumbled, her heart filling with rage. If I had known what was going on, I would have tried to come and rescue you guys. But I couldn't get any information, so I had no idea what was going on. I also could not contact my pack members, and my phone lost service. It is better that you did not come, Zero told her. You would have ended up in trouble with us. Why on earth did he do this to Anna? Beryl asked. What did he want from you? He did not reveal his true identity, so he was pretending to be Julian, accusing us of colluding with the witches to plot against the royal pack. Zero replied. I sneaked out a few times, and I heard some servants mention that the king had become stricter, Beryl said. Since they all think it is really Julian, no one has raised the alarm, Lyra said, recalling the normal atmosphere she found in the capital city. It is no wonder the entire kingdom is going on as if nothing has happened. As long as the Rogue King maintains Julian's face, everyone will think he is just being crazy. What will we do? Beryl asked. If he keeps this up, he'll soon be in control of the entire kingdom. That will not happen, Zero said. He fooled us to this point. But now we've got him. He is not going to get what he wants. I need a basin of clean water, Beryl said. I'll get it, Zero said, springing to action. Not you. Sit down, Beryl ordered him. Look at your wrists. Zero's wrists were chafed from friction with the cuffs, and his knees and ankles were not any better. It is nothing, he said. Beryl turned to Zero and lifted his shirt. His back was crisscrossed with whip marks. I need to look at you too. I'll be fine, he said stubbornly. Anna is the one who needs your help. You won't be much use to anyone here if you come down with an infection, she told him. The rogues are in bed with the witches. Goddess knows what they may have exposed you to in the dungeons. I'll look at you, but first we need to move. Why? Zero asked. It is safe here, isn't it? Yeah, but there is no electricity. That is good for staying unnoticed, but it'll be too cold for Anna, Beryl said. We don't have to go far. There is a villa about 100 yards from here that has what we need. There is food and clean water there too. Let's go then. Zero said. Beryl pulled a robe from her belongings, which she had lacked when she pretended to leave the palace. After wrapping Anna in it, Zero picked her up from the bed. They left the house and moved through the darkness to the other villa. When they got to the other villa, they went into the bedroom. While Beryl resumed treating Anna, Zero and Lyra covered the window with heavy drapes and sent up several candles in the room, providing adequate lighting. After that, they went through the house with torches, ensuring all the doors and windows were locked. They also identified escape routes they could use in case of an ambush. In the kitchen, they found enough food items to feed all three of them. Zero, who was worried that Anna was too weak after being poorly fed in the dungeons, immediately started pulling out ingredients to make food. While he got busy in the kitchen, Lyra went back to the bedroom to check on Beryl and Anna. Beryl had already dressed most of her wounds, and Lyra was happy to see that she wasn't as pale as she had looked a while back. "She is stable now," Beryl told Lyra, "but she has fallen asleep, so we'll wait until she wakes up to find out whether she has any complaints." Lyra nodded and stepped up to Anna. Reaching forward, she used her hand to pat her hair back. Why had the Rogue King targeted Anna? Was it part of his charade in pretending to be Julian? Or had he done it because Anna had betrayed the witches? Or had he been torturing her to try and get information out of Zero? Whatever his reasons, Lyra wished Anna had not been caught in the middle of all this. She had been through so much already, and now when her life had finally taken a good turn. This happens. Lyra had promised her that she would be safe in the palace. Who would have thought that she would end up suffering the most in the place that was supposed to be her refuge? Lyra swore to make the Rogue King suffer and pay with his life. He had touched the people she cared about the most, and this time she would be able to do something about it. When dinner was ready, the three of them settled on the floor to eat, while keeping an eye on Anna, who was still sleeping. "We need to act fast," Lyra said. "The Rogue King has probably been freed by now, and must be looking all over for us." "You are right," Zero said. "The faster we act, the better. Let's not give him time to call for backup. So far, I don't think he has brought all his troops into the palace, since he has been pretending to be Julian. If he does anything drastic, it'll blow his cover." Lyra nodded. As long as the Rogue King was playing pretend, they had a better chance of succeeding. "We have to look for Julian tonight. Is there anything you noticed when you two got back that could help us? Do you have any idea how many of his warriors are in the palace?" "I cannot be sure," Zero said. "But when he started behaving strangely, some of the palace officials questioned his motives. He blatantly ignored their suggestions and acted in a way he had never done before. I could not communicate with anyone while I was in the dungeon, but I am sure elders from the royal pack would have questioned my imprisonment. Maybe if we can find some of the palace officials, we can find some important information." Beryl nodded in agreement. It is possible some of them have realized the deception. Witches can be cunning and crafty, but their tricks are not unknown. Since he behaved outrageously compared to Julian's normal temperament, it may have tipped off some of the older staff. Also, if we are lucky, we might find someone who knows what happened to Julian. "I'll go with one of you to look for Julian," Lyra said, looking at the two of them, "while the other stays with Anna." "Anna is out of danger, so Zero will stay with her," Beryl said. "Plus he is in no shape to go looking for trouble." "I'm not as fragile as you seem to think," Zero grumbled. "But yes, I'll stay with Anna. You guys be safe." After that, Lyra and Beryl prepared to leave the building. Since they were going back to the most heavily guarded area in the palace, they had to be extra careful. Fortunately, it was dark, so it was easier to hide whenever they came across guards. They were crossing a garden when a sudden voice cracked through the night. "Get up!" Lyra and Beryl instantly crouched down, hiding behind a bush. Looking around the bush, Lyra saw a male on the ground getting kicked by two guards. "Let's just end him," one of the guards said. "He obviously does not want to leave this lace alive." "Fine," the other one said, moving towards the male's feet. He picked up something from the ground, and Lyra saw that it was a rope. Stepping back, he threw it towards the tree near them. After a couple of tries, he managed to hook it onto one of the branches. He held the loose end, then started to pull. His companion joined him. "What the fuck are they doing?" Beryl muttered as it became clear what was happening. The other end of the rope was tied to the male's feet, and soon he was suspended in the air, hanging from his feet. The guards tied the rope around the tree, securing him. One of the guards brandished a dagger and moved to the male. If you don't cooperate, I'll behead you where you hang. Monsters, the male spat. You might as well kill me right now. One of the guards kicked him in the head, and Lyra lurched forward. Beryl barely held her back just in time. We can't attract attention. They are going to kill him, Lyra said. He might be one of us. Maybe he knows the truth, and that is why they want to get rid of him. That might be true, but we can't have the guards after us. We have to find Julian first, Beryl reasoned. It is fine, Lyra said, focusing on one of the guards. I've got this, using telepathy. She infiltrated the guard's mind and made him convinced that he had been summoned by the head guard. A few seconds later, the guard turned to the other one. The head guard wants us back. It is urgent. Without paying any more attention to the male, they left the scene. Lyra and Beryl waited for a few more seconds, during which she sensed the surroundings to ensure no one else was around. When she confirmed that it was safe, they ran out to the male and cut him down from the tree. Master Aldous! Beryl called when she saw the man's face clearly. Do you know him? Lyra asked her. Yes, Beryl replied. He is a respected member of the royal pack, and he was once Julian's teacher. Let's get him out of here first, Lyra said, looking around. They were in an open place and anyone who passed by would see them. Helping him up, they led him behind a building and out of sight. What happened to you? Beryl asked, using her flashlight. His clothes were bloodied from an obvious beating. The king tried to ask me about sensitive secret information, and I realized he is the rogue King Niall. I had my suspicions before, but I wasn't sure. When he asked me about things His Majesty definitely knows, I realized my suspicions were right. I tried to expose him with a few questions, but he realized I had discovered his true identity. He tried to force me to give him the information he wanted, and when I refused, he ordered my execution. He looked from Beryl to Lyra. I owe you two my life. If you ever need my assistance, I'll be happy to help. If you could give us more information about the situation in the palace, that would be very helpful. We are trying to look for His Majesty, Lyra told him. Right now, the palace is overrun by rogues, Aldous informed them. I have no idea where His Majesty is. Is there anywhere you can think of that he could be, perhaps in hiding? Beryl asked. There are secret passages and chambers in the palace that are only disclosed to the king and queen, Aldous told them. He might have used one of them, but if he was alive, he would have escaped the palace and arranged to come back and retake it with backup. He sighed, his head falling forward in dejection. If His Majesty is dead, we are done for. The witches have been working on experiments to take us down for years, and now it seems they have succeeded. I don't think he is dead, Lyra told him. If he was dead, Niall would have already taken over everything. He would not still be hiding behind a false face, pretending to be Julian. You said he was asking you for secret information. That is a good sign. It means he does not have complete control yet. Beryl nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. He would not be so careful and sneaky if he knew for certain that Julian is dead. You might be right, Aldous said. He shook his head, looking troubled. This has never happened before. If not for collaborating with the witches, the rogue king would not have been able to stage such an ambush. If Niall is not stopped, the entire kingdom will be in danger. What happened to the Red Moon pack might happen to every pack. I'll not let it get to that, Lyra vowed resolutely. I'll find Julian, and we'll stop the attack. Where can I find the secret passages? I am afraid I can't tell you, Aldous said. Their locations are very confidential. Even I don't know about them. Only the reigning members of the royal family know about them. Lyra and Beryl exchanged a look of disappointment. I must find them, Lyra said. It would help to know where to look, but there was no backing down. If she had to scour every inch of the palace to find the secret passages, that is what she would do. She had been able to find Beryl. Maybe if she got close enough to wherever Julian was, she would be able to sense him. Beryl, take Master Aldous back to the villa, Lyra instructed. I'll go and look for Julian. Alone? Beryl questioned. That is too risky. I'll be fine, Lyra assured her. And Master Aldous needs medical attention right away. I'll use our bond to try and find Julian. Lyra knew that normally, she should have been able to sense Julian as soon as she got near the palace. She wasn't sure she would be able to find him that way, but she could only hope she would be able to. The same way she found Beryl. After Beryl left with Master Aldous, Lyra ventured towards the main palace building alone. Unlike before, she came across more guards on the patrol, all of them moving briskly. She realized they must be looking for her, and Zero, and Anna. That made it riskier to make progress towards the palace. But she finally managed to get there undetected. She approached from the back and went in through a window. She thought about where the secret passages could be located. Julian's suite and his office seemed to be the most likely locations. But since Aldous had mentioned that there were several of them, they could also be in areas such as the study room, the library, or even a lounge room. Deciding that Julian's bedroom was the most likely location, she started there. She made it to the upper floor using the service stairway, which was thankfully deserted. There were no guards in the hallway, and when she got to Julian's room, she found the door unlocked. Stepping inside quickly, she shut it behind her. She was welcomed by the sight of chaos. Things in the room had been thrown about, with the furniture overturned and other items scattered on the floor. Clearly, someone had already searched the room. Moving quickly, Lyra started by checking the bookshelf in the room. All the books had been thrown onto the floor, and she wondered whether Niall had also been looking for the secret passage. She found nothing on the bookshelf and moved on to the bedside table. She checked all the compartments and even moved it from its position against the wall, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. She did the same to the dresser and the closet. After finding nothing in the room, she moved on to the bathroom. She pushed against every tile on the wall, moved to the floor, and even inspected the bathtub and the shower controls. She also checked the cabinets, but she did not find any hidden mechanism. Refusing to give up, she sat down on the floor and closed her eyes. She tried to search with her mind, but there was no inkling of the connection between her and Julian. Was he really dead? Had she been lying to herself all this time? As emotions welled up inside her, she pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. Where are you? Please don't be dead, she muttered. Please. How could everything go so wrong just when it was going right? How unlucky could she be? Right now, she should be dealing with the preparations for their bonding ceremony. Instead, she was looking for her missing mate, and she could not even say with certainty that he was alive. Was she really cursed? Was she never meant to have what she wanted? To be happy? Don't give up yet, Ray told her softly. There are still many places to search. I am not giving up, Lyra replied. I can't. I have to find him. There is still the office. There are many places where the passages could be located. Maybe he used the less obvious ones. I'll look for all of them, no matter how long it takes. Even if Julian was dead, she would still find him. She did not want to think of that possibility, but she had to accept that it could be the case. Whether he was alive or dead, she would not let the Rogue King win. As long as she could fight, she would. Getting up, she walked back to the bedroom. She stood in the middle and looked around one last time, trying to figure out what she could be missing. When her eyes landed on the bed, she paused. As she stared at it, she couldn't help recalling the last time they had been together in her room. He had been reluctant to let her go that morning, and she remembered how he had held on to her. If she had not left the palace, would this have happened? What if that became the last time she saw him? Taking a deep breath, she turned away and forced the dark thoughts from her head. It was time to go look in the office. She started towards the door but stopped suddenly. Turning her head to the left, she stared at a potted plant on the wall supported by a small piece of wood. She had looked through everything in the room, but she had not touched the plant. She walked towards the little shelf and reached for the pot. Looking inside, there was only dirt and the plant. She went to return it but hesitated, giving the shelf another look. Putting the potted plant down, she reached for the piece of wood. She pushed it inwards towards the wall, but nothing happened. Grabbing the edge, she pulled towards herself. At first, nothing happened. But when she used both hands to pull, the piece budged. Applying more force, she kept pulling. The wood started separating from the wall on one side, and she kept pulling until it was jutting straight out of the wall. Lyra heard a clicking sound, and then the wall in front of her moved, letting go of the wood. She stepped back and watched as a section of the wall disappeared inside the wall to the left, like a pocket door. Finally, it stopped, leaving a dark opening. Stale air hit Lyra with a blast, causing her to cough a bit. Her heart beating with hope, she stepped through the opening. The passage was dark, so Lyra turned her flashlight on. Right in front of her was a steep staircase that led downwards. She took the stairs slowly, alert for any sort of sound. After a few steps down, a different scent pierced through the stale air. "It is him!" Ray cried excitedly. "He is here!" Even before Ray was done with her exclamations, Lyra's heart was already beating excitedly as she began hurrying down the staircase. The farther she went, the stronger Julian's scent became. It was mingled with a strong scent of blood. He must be injured. But he was alive. He is alive. That was what mattered. Finally, Lyra got to the bottom of the staircase. She shone her flashlight around what appeared to be an empty chamber. Finally, the light fell on Julian sitting on the floor in a corner. Lyra rushed to him, tons of emotions coursing through her. She was about to throw herself at him, but stopped at the last second as she noticed his state. He was shirtless, and there was a big wound on his chest. As her light shone on his face, she noticed how pale he was, how dry his lips were. She fell to her knees, her eyes examining his wound closely. "What happened to you?" "It is nothing," he said, his voice dry and coarse. "Why are you here?" "It is not healing," she pointed out, a bad feeling overwhelming her. From the state of the wound, she could tell it was not fresh, and yet it still looked raw, and the skin around it had turned purple. "Julian, what happened to you?" "It was a silver dagger," he replied. "That is why it is taking a while to heal." "I'll be fine." No, he did not look like he would be fine. Not if he didn't get medical attention as soon as possible. It was a miracle that he was still alive after suffering such a wound and having it fester for days. "Was it the Rogue King?" she asked him. "Did he do this to you?" Julian reached for her hand and gripped it. His grip was weak. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be at the Red Moon Pack." "I had a dream last night," she told him. "You were in a fight with someone, and you got stabbed. I could not shake off the bad feeling even after waking, so I decided to come back and see you. When I got here, I heard that you imprisoned Zero and Anna, so I went to the dungeon right away." "What?" "I did not. That was not me." "I know," she told him. "I found the Rogue King in the dungeon." "Did he hurt you?" Julian asked. Lyra shook her head. I managed to subdue him and release them. Are they all right?" "Anna was hurt badly, but Beryl is taking care of her," Lyra informed him. "Zero was beaten up too, but not as badly. He just needs to regain his strength." "Fucking witches!" Julian cursed. "I should have gone after them with the information I already had from Anna. They are the only reason the Rogue King was able to do this. They are helping him change his appearance and mask his scent. When we fought, he gloated that he was going to control the royal family and take over the packs. He thought I would die and left me for the dead. Luckily, I was able to gather my strength, and that is how I managed to make it here." A feeling of dread spread through Lyra as she heard how he had survived. If not for luck, he would have been dead. He was only alive because of the Rogue King's carelessness. Her eyes welled in tears as she realized just how close she had been to losing him forever. She cleared her throat in an attempt to pull herself together and asked, "Have you been hiding here since then?" "Yeah," he replied. "How long has it been? I passed out at some point." 3 days, she told him. "Fuck," he swore again. "How are things out there?" "He is still pretending to be you," she told him. "It seems that the pack members still have not realized what is happening. However, while coming here, I ran into your former teacher, Master Aldous. He figured out the Rogue King's deception and almost got executed. Beryl and I showed up just in time to save him. Maybe other elders have realized he is not you. You have to go outside the palace and warn others," Julian told her. "Take the others and leave the palace. If you can make it to the training center, there is a secret tunnel you can use and find us." "What are you talking about?" Lyra cut him off. "I am not going anywhere without you." "Lyra, look at me," he said gently. She shook her head, his tone making her tears finally fall over. "I'll get you out of here, and Beryl will treat your wound. I'll just be a burden to you," he told her. "We'll get caught if we leave together. But if you go alone, how can I do that?" she demanded. "Do you want me to leave you here to die? Do you think I can do that?" "I won't die," he told her gently. "Once you go outside the palace, you can gather troops from the packs and come back. Zero and Beryl will help you." Lyra shook her head. "I came for you, and I am not leaving without you. I'll ask Beryl to come and treat you here." "She'll be in danger," he told her. "Her wolf is not like yours. If she comes across the rogues, she won't be able to compel them. Then, I'll go back and bring medicine and food," she said. "When you are better, we'll leave together." "Lyra, please," he pleaded. "You know I am right. This is the only way to I." Lyra threw her arms around him and hugged him, careful to not hurt his wound. "I won't go. I am lucky that I found you like this. If I leave you again, I can't risk leaving you behind. I am safe here," he assured her. "Niall must have been looking for me all this time and he never found me. You'll only leave me alone for a few hours before you come back with backup." "Have you contacted Asher?" Lyra shook her head. "I have no idea where he is." "Lyra, listen to me," Julian implored. "You are our only hope. If you don't go, we might not be able to defeat him." "Defeat me!" A voice like Julian's came from behind Lyra. She turned around to find the Rogue King at the bottom of the stairs, looking at them instantly. She placed herself in front of Julian and spread her arms wide, shielding him from the enemy. Niall's lips curled up in an evil smirk. "Do you still think you'll get out of this alive?" Niall took slow steps towards them, the smirk on his face widening. "This is great," he said. "I get to take both of you down together, romantic, right?" "In your dreams," Lyra told him through clenched teeth. Was it a coincidence that he had found the secret chamber at that moment, or had he been following her? "Earlier you were lucky," Niall told her. "You caught me off guard. This time, you are at my mercy." Slowly, Lyra got to her feet. "You are dreaming if you thought you could walk into our territory and take whatever you want. When I am done with you, your head will be hanging outside the city gates as a warning to the likes of you." Niall laughed maniacally, throwing his head back. "You are the one who is dreaming, little she-wolf," he told her. "It is over. Accept it. He is going to die in the end. You are the only one dying here," she spat, then lunged at him. He reacted immediately and rushed towards her. She jumped and aimed a punch at his face, but he met her fist with his open palm, blocking her attack. Using his other hand, he shoved against her chest, throwing her against the wall. "Lyra!" Julian shouted, trying to get up. The small effort caused a rush of pain through his body, and his chest felt like it was on fire. His body was also weak, with no strength that could support his limbs. He was forced to settle back onto the floor. Leave. Ignoring his warning, Lyra lunged towards Niall again. Throwing her entire weight behind her body, she slammed into him, forcing him onto the floor. Before he could react, she held him down by the shoulder and punched him several times in the face. But Niall was a strong alpha male, and he easily rolled her off him and onto the floor. He punched her like she had punched him, his lips peeled back in a snarl. "Stupid fucking bitch! I'll teach you a lesson!" While he attacked her face, he was not holding her lower body down to the floor firmly. Lyra jerked her hips upwards, knocking into his behind. Caught off guard, Niall fell forward face first into the floor. Lyra twisted from beneath him and climbed onto his back, wrapping her arms around his neck. Niall reached for her arms and tried to free himself, but she held on tightly, choking him. Finally, he gave up and struggled to get on his feet. Stepping backwards, he slammed her against the wall. Lyra's head slammed back into the stone, causing her to lose her grip on him. She slithered to the floor, her vision wonky from the hit on her head. Niall walked to her and started kicking her. "You think you can beat me? I am the rogue king. I am the fucking king, and you are nothing but a fucking bitch." Niall's expletive came after Lyra unsheathed one of her daggers and sliced across the back of his lower leg, injuring his tendon. Grabbing his leg, he limped backwards, more curses spewing from his lips. Lyra got up, hunching over in pain. "Running?" she asked him mockingly. She spit blood to the floor and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Is the mighty rogue king afraid?" Niall unsheathed a knife too. He glared at Lyra with eyes full of anger, his teeth bared. A pool of blood was gathering on the floor beneath his leg. "Go now," Julian told Lyra, urgently. "I won't leave you," she told him. "Listen to me," he pleaded, his voice full of desperation. "You are the only one who can save us." Niall took another step back, and Lyra straightened and stepped towards him. Niall crouched low as if getting into a combative pose, but suddenly he spun away and limped behind Julian. Crouching behind him, he held the knife to Julian's neck. He looked at Lyra coldly. "Take another step, and I'll slit his throat open." Lyra cursed. She had been careless. She shouldn't have left Julian unguarded. Swallowing her fear, she asked, "Afraid to come at a little she-wolf?" Reaching into his pocket, Niall retrieved a syringe. He threw it across the room to Lyra's feet. "Do not even think about using your trick from the dungeon. If that thing is not in your veins by the time I count to 3, he dies." 1. "Don't do it," Julian told Lyra. "I'll be all right. Just go. Surrender, or he dies," Niall told her. "I am the one you want," Julian told Niall. "Let her leave and you can do whatever you want with me. Do I look like I need to negotiate with you to do what I want?" Niall sneered. He cocked his head at Lyra. 2, this is your last chance to save his neck." Quickly, Lyra picked up the syringe. Glaring at Niall, she said, "I'll do as you say. Do not hurt him," Niall scoffed. "You are not the one giving the instructions here, sweetheart." "Don't do it," Julian begged. "He is lying." "Leave, Lyra, please." Lyra avoided looking at Julian. She could hear the pleading in his voice, but she could not do as he asked. She knew there was a possibility that Niall would not stay true to his words, but she would never bargain with Julian's life. She knew for certain that if she defied Niall, he would kill Julian right away. So, there was only one option. Taking the syringe, she plunged the needle into her arm. "If you do anything to him, I'll make you pay." "Lyra, no!" Julian screamed. A smile split Niall's lips. "Good girl." Lyra felt woozy and stumbled towards the wall behind her. Her dagger cluttered to the floor as her limbs grew rubbery. Then she fell to her knees before her body crumpled to the floor, unconscious. When Lyra came to, she was lying down on a bed. She opened her eyes to a familiar ceiling. When she turned her head, she realized she was still in Julian's room. Looking out of the window, She saw it was daylight. She also became aware that her arms were tied to the headboard above her head. When she tried to move her lower body, she felt restraints on her ankles too. She was tied to the bed, rendered powerless. She wiggled her body, trying to loosen the restraints, but it was futile. How long had it been? Was Julian okay? What about Beryl and the others? Suddenly, someone appeared in her view. Niall, still wearing Julian's face, stood over her. "Where is Julian?" she asked him. "Shouldn't you be worried about yourself instead?" He asked her. "I did what you asked," she said. "Is he safe?" "We'll talk about that later," Niall said. "For now, why don't we get to know each other? We've met twice already, but we haven't introduced ourselves properly." He pressed his palm to his chest. "I am Niall, the Rogue King. It is a pleasure to meet you." "A pleasure?" "Yeah, it'd be when she finally beheaded him." "What do you want from me?" Lyra demanded. Niall placed both hands on the edge of the bed and leaned forward, getting closer to her. "You," he said. "I heard that the Lycan King had finally found his mate, and I was curious about what kind of female she was." Nike straightened up and paced along the length of the bed, his hands intertwined behind his back. There was no limp in his gait, which meant his injury had healed. "There were rumors," he continued. "Some said that she had no background. Others said that she was an Omega. Others said she was not pretty." He turned around and looked at Lyra, his lips slightly upturned in a grin that made Lyra sick to the stomach. "Now, I see that all of those were baseless rumors, weren't they? You must have been so obsessed with us if you had your informants deliver gossip to you," Lyra said in a bored tone. "Is there any reason you are repeating it to me? Or do you just love hearing yourself talk?" Niall walked closer to her and reached for her face. Lyra flinched as his fingers touched her skin and ran down the side of her face. "They were all wrong. You are the exact kind of female who should be beside a king. You should be happy about that, because it is why I've kept you alive to this point." Swallowing her feelings of disgust at his proximity and touch, Lyra asked, "Is that so? And here I was, thinking it was because I beat your ass twice." Niall smirked. "I admit, you are good. I've never been bested by a female before, and that is why I am offering you a chance to decide your fate. Reject your mate and become my Luna, and I'll give you everything you want." Lyra scoffed and turned her face, pulling away from his touch forcefully. "You have nothing that I want. Do you really think they would have accepted you?" Niall questioned. "You are not an alpha's daughter, and your background is suspicious at best. The king might have announced you as his future queen, but do you think the Pax would have sat by and let it happen? You might not know this, but palace politics can be very dirty. If you choose me, you don't have to try to fit into anyone's standards. With me, you can forget about their outdated rules and do whatever you want." Lyra turned her head to look at him again. "And a thief like you is so much better than them." Niall's jaw ticked. "I did not steal anything. I only took what is rightfully mine." "Yeah, when was it yours?" Lyra asked. "Who gave them the right to decide who is right and who is wrong?" Nike seethed, getting worked up. "All werewolves should be free to go wherever they want and live wherever they want. They are all nothing but cowards. If you challenge them, they ostracize you and call you an outcast, a rogue. Why do we have to bow to any of them to live respectfully?" Those are interesting words coming from a king who forced his warriors to go to war, despite his people wanting to live in peace. Lyra pointed out. "A price has to be paid," he said, getting more animated. "We cannot live in the dark forever." "Says someone hiding behind someone else's face," Lyra jabbed. "Maybe you should remain in the dark. You are clearly too much of a coward to face your enemies in the light." Sighing, she lifted her gaze to the ceiling. "Now I understand why those rogues at the Red Moon Pack were quick to surrender and abandon you. Who would want to live under a coward?" When she looked at him again, his face was twitching in anger. You are nothing but a thief, and sooner or later you'll be back to being the nobody that you are. Niall slapped her, her head whipping to the side. Do not think I cannot kill you right now, he growled. What is stopping you? She challenged him. Finally, Niall dropped the whip to the bed and turned away. He walked to the table, and when he faced Lyra again, he was holding a syringe in his hand. I tried being nice to you, he said, inspecting the liquid in the syringe. It is your fault that things have to be this way. Lyra swallowed, her entire body stinging with pain. What is that? This. He showed her the syringe, which contained a greenish liquid. Since you refuse to be my partner, I have to keep you in line. This will make sure you cannot get up to any funny business. He walked forward and reached for Lyra's arm. Since she was bound, there was nothing Lyra could do to stop him. Did the witches give you that? She mocked as he plunged the needle into her arm. Aren't you ashamed of being a traitor to your own kind? You are in no position to judge me, he told her. Look at yourself. You are willing to die for the same people who made your life a living hell. You are a traitor to yourself. I would call you a slave, but you are worse. A slave has the excuse of not having a choice. You are now stronger than those who treated you like a slave. But you are too stupid to take revenge for yourself. Is that what you are doing? Lyra asked him. Taking revenge for yourself. Did some stronger, more powerful alpha attack your pack and cast you out? Or did you try to steal someone else's pack and get thrown into the jungle? What is your story? I am nothing like you. Niall sneered, pulling back the now empty syringe. I don't need other people's approval. I do what I want, when I want. And you'll do what I want unless you want Julian to die. So he is alive, Lyra thought. Feeling relieved. Do you understand? He growled, glaring at her. Lyra said nothing but returned his glare. Nike gripped her jaw tightly, his fingers pressing into her bone painfully. I said, do you understand? Yes, she replied through her teeth. Niall let go of her and threw the empty syringe onto the bedside table. Then, he clapped his hands once loudly. A guard walked into the room, carrying a maid's uniform. Remove her restraints, Niall instructed the guard. The guard walked forward and did as told. When Lyra sat up in bed, wondering what Niall was up to, he threw the maid's uniform at her. Wear that! Lyra looked at the uniform in confusion. She could not feel any effect from whatever he had injected her with. What on earth did he want to do? Honey! A familiar voice interrupted Lyra's line of thought. Looking up, she saw Crystal walk into the room. Crystal walked up to Niall and entwined their arms. Why did you start without me? She asked, looking up at him with a coy expression. You were sleeping so peacefully, Nike said, stroking her chin with his thumb. I did not dare to wake you up, Crystal pouted. But you know how much I've been waiting for this day. I didn't want to miss anything. Meanwhile, Lyra was processing the meaning of Crystal appearing like this. Was she in coalition with Niall and the witches? She couldn't have? Of course she could. Her father had been executed, her family was disgraced, and her pack was under strict scrutiny. Crystal had lost everything she prided herself on. Of course, she would partner with the Rogue King to get revenge. You must have thought you had seen the last of me, Crystal said, separating herself from Niall and approaching Lyra. Did you think I would disappear into the dark and let you have what is mine? Lyra looked her straight in the eyes. I am not surprised. Only someone like you is capable of something so despicable. Despicable! Crystal echoed and laughed. What is so despicable about making the people who ruined my life pay? So, are you going to sell everyone to the rogues and the witches because you don't like the consequences of your own actions? Lyra asked her. My own actions? Crystal asked incredulously. She pointed a finger at Lyra. It was your fault. My fiancé abandoned me because of you, and he killed my father to protect you. It all happened because of you. Niall stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Crystal's shoulder. It is okay, babe. They cannot hurt you anymore. I told you I'd let you play with her, didn't I? You did, Crystal agreed, a sinister smile curving her lips. I'll leave you to it then, he said. Don't worry, I've made sure she is as harmless as a kitten. I am not afraid of her, Crystal claimed. No, you are not, Niall affirmed. You are an alpha female, and she is just an omega. Crystal smiled smugly, and he kissed her lips. Have fun, he told her before, leaving with the guard. You must be so desperate to become queen if you'll settle for that trash, Lyra commented as soon as it was just the two of them. Crystal stomped towards her, swung her arm, and slapped her across the face. I told you, didn't I? She seethed through clenched teeth. Nobody takes what is mine. Lyra's body was weak from the whipping, and Crystal's slap made her stumble back into the bed. Crystal grabbed her by the hair and pulled her forward before flinging her to the floor. Julian cannot protect you now, can he? Crystal mocked. It is time to pay for everything you put me through. Lyra tried to gather her inner strength, but nothing came to her. That is when Niall's words to Crystal registered. He said that he had made her as harmless as a kitten. He also told Lyra that he wanted to keep her in line so she wouldn't try anything. She realized Niall had injected her with a poison that inhibited her wolf's powers. It was why she could not read Niall's mind, and why she could not tap into her wolf's strength. Do you have nothing to say? Crystal scoffed. After all, you were nothing but an imposter. Eventually, your true nature was going to be revealed. You are making a big mistake, Lyra told her. Do you want to end up just like your father? Crystal's face twisted in anger. She threw herself at Lyra and wrapped her hands around her neck. Don't you dare mention my father. Her hands around Lyra's neck tightened, cutting off Lyra's air supply. I'll kill you. I swear I'll kill you. Lyra thought she was really going to die, as she started feeling woozy from the lack of air. Her bound hands, trying to push Crystal away, were useless. Crystal only let go of her when her face started turning blue. Lyra fell on the floor, gasping for air. This is the beginning of the rest of your life, Crystal told her. I'll kill that bastard mate of yours, and you'll be my pet forever. I'll do whatever I want with you, and no one will save you. She spread her arms out wide and gestured around them. All of this will belong to me. It'll all be mine. As Lyra slowly made up for her oxygen deficit, she wondered what Crystal would do if she knew that a few minutes ago, her supposed partner had been asking Lyra to be his Luna. When Lyra finally managed to pull herself together and lean up against the chest of drawers, Crystal approached her with a knife in hand. She caressed the blade with her fingers slowly. First, however, let's do something about that face of yours. Walking forward, she leaned forward and dragged the tip of the knife around Lyra's face. Let's see how many males will look at you twice when I am done with you. Lyra did not doubt for a second that Crystal would use the knife on her face. This was the same person who had thrown Anna into the pool with a dangerous lizard, and now she was collaborating with the kingdom's enemies. What do you think you are doing? Scared, Crystal mocked. Can't do anything for yourself unless you are spreading your legs where they don't belong. She waved the knife in front of Lyra's face. You know what? Maybe we should give you a new face altogether. I am sick of seeing this one. But, of course, we'll have to get rid of this one first. You are crazy, Lyra seethed. Crystal stood up straight and laughed dramatically. Crazy. You are the one who bit off more than you could chew. What did you say earlier, consequences? Well, these are the consequences of your actions. Enjoy them. She approached Lyra again, an excited look in her eyes. She held the knife firmly in her hand, while her eyes roved Lyra's face, looking for the right place to begin. Lyra panicked. Crystal was not bluffing, that was certain. She would happily kill Lyra, and she could, but she got more satisfaction from torturing her. Lyra was painfully aware of how powerless she was. Her hands were bound. She could not use her wolf's abilities. Crystal touched the knife to Lyra's temple and applied pressure. She grinned evilly as the blade broke through skin and a trickle of blood appeared. Knowing she had one chance, Lyra flung her body towards Crystal, who was crouched right in front of her. Lyra slammed into her, sending both of them to the floor. The knife flew out of Crystal's hand and clattered to the floor. Crystal twisted and reached for the knife, but Lyra climbed onto her back, keeping her from crawling away. Acting fast, Lyra swung her bound hands over Crystal's head, bringing the rope to her throat. Using all the strength she could muster, she pulled back. Choking Crystal with the rough rope, Crystal tried to throw her off, but Lyra wrapped her legs around her lower body and crossed them as hard as she could. Gluing their bodies together, finally, Crystal stopped thrashing and went still. Lyra maintained her position for a bit longer until she was entirely sure that Crystal was fully unconscious. Julian lay on the floor of his cell in the dungeons, his teeth clenched in pain. His skin was covered with a sheen of sweat, and around his chest wound, black veins could be seen through sickly skin. Without treatment, his wound was only getting worse. After throwing him into the dungeon the previous night, Niall had provided him with nothing, not food, water, or medicine. If he did not get treatment soon, the silver poisoning would kill him. But his life was not the one he thought about when he closed his eyes. He kept seeing the image of Lyra collapsing on the floor, going still. Don't be dead. Stay alive. He could not bear the thought of anything happening to her. It was all his fault that she ended up in Niall's hands. He was supposed to be strong enough to protect her. Instead, he was the reason her life was in danger. And now, if he died like this, he would fail her ultimately. He wished she had left last night. She insisted on saving him, but it could all be futile in the end. Julian suspected that the dagger Niall used had been poisoned. But even if it hadn't, the silver alone was dangerous enough. Even his superior healing abilities could not help. He wondered why Niall was keeping him alive. Unless he was planning on letting Julian suffer a slow, agonizing death. He felt himself losing consciousness, but was roused by the sound of the heavy metal cell door creaking open. He opened his eyes and saw Niall walk into the cell. "Where is Lyra?" Julian asked when Niall stopped in front of him. "Adorable," Niall said. "She asked about you first too." "It must be hell not knowing what is going on, right? She has nothing to do with this," Julian said. "Let her go." Niall scoffed. "Do you take me for a fool? You were far much easier to take down than she was. Why would I let her go?" "What do you want?" Julian demanded through clenched teeth. Niall tapped his chin. "You must be a slow one if it is not obvious by now. But I get it. You are deteriorating. I am impressed you have not dropped dead yet. Hang on a little longer and see me take everything from you. Even your little mate will belong to me. She is not someone you can play with," Julian warned. "She'll eat you alive," Nike smirked. "Is that so? But she looked so good in her maid uniform that I am thinking of keeping her as my slave. You saw how she was last night. Quite obedient. Good luck with that," Julian told him in a feigned disinterested tone. He was worried about what Niall had in store for Lyra, but he thought it was good that Niall felt he could easily control Lyra. Julian knew better than anyone what she was capable of. With her wolf's powers, she would definitely catch Nike off guard as long as he underestimated her. "She is powerful," Nike admitted, "but everyone has a weakness. She'd do anything to keep you alive. So as long as I keep you breathing, she'll do whatever I tell her to." Nike sighed and paced, walking back and forth in front of Julian. "She is exactly my type. When she glares at me with those pretty eyes of hers, all I want to do is press her to the nearest surface and take her hard." Julian clenched his jaw and glared at the floor. Niall, seeing him get worked up, decided to push him to the edge. "She must be good, right?" he posed. "Why else would you choose her over all those alpha females lining up for you? There is something in her eyes that is just begging to be fucked until she..." Yuri howled angrily, and a sudden surge of energy flowed through Julian. He lunged forward, but he was too weak. He fell to the floor on his stomach before he could get to Niall, instantly vomiting blackish blood. "Ouch," Nike muttered, crouching next to Julian sprawled on the floor. "You don't look too good. Let me take care of her on your behalf. As long as she remains my good little slave, I'll not make her suffer. I'll kill you," Julian growled, tasting the foul taste of the blood in his mouth. "Can you?" Nike questioned seriously before bursting into laughter. He got up and looked down at Julian as he struggled to get back up. "All I am missing now is the crescent star. Once I have that, no one can stop me." "Absolutely no one." Julian fell still when he heard Niall's words. The crescent star. How did he know about that? It was a royal treasure hidden in a secret chamber in the palace, and only the reigning Lycan kings had access to it. Anyone who had that treasure in his hands could either rule over or destroy the kingdom. If Niall got his hands on it, an idea streaked through Julian's mind. If Niall wanted the treasure so badly, he would be willing to trade for it. "Right? You want the treasure?" he asked, finally sitting back against the wall. "I can give it to you, but you have to let Lyra go." After rendering Crystal unconscious, Lyra held the knife between her feet and used it to cut the rope around her hands. It was a slow process, and she was worried that someone would show up before she was done. Luckily, nobody came into the room. Once she set herself free, she used the knife to cut a sheet into strips, then used them to bind Crystal's hands and feet. She tied another strip around Crystal's mouth so that when she came to, she would not be able to scream for help. After that, Lyra dragged her towards the secret chamber door. Standing at the top of the stairs, she pushed Crystal into the space below. Crystal's body tumbled down the stairs for a few seconds before falling to the room below, with a heavy thud. Satisfied, Lyra shut the door to the secret room. After that, she went into the bathroom. The maid uniform she was wearing turned out to be the perfect disguise. By pretending to be one of the maids, she could walk from the main building to the dungeon to look for Julian. She cleaned her face and combed her hair, salvaging her appearance. She tucked Crystal's knife beneath her dress, then took a laundry basket and walked out of the room. She made her way from Julian's room to the kitchen, without coming across any guard or attracting any attention. In the kitchen, she switched the laundry basket for a tray and a bowl of stew. When she walked into the security building a while later, the guard at the entrance stopped her. "Who is that for?" he asked, looking into the bowl of stew. "His Majesty ordered to deliver this to the prisoner he brought last night," she told the guard, keeping her face downturned. "Go on," he said, stepping back. When Lyra got to the dungeons, there were prisoners in a few cells. But none of them were Julian. She was about to take a turn towards the farthest cell when Niall's voice came out of nowhere. "Give it to me, and I'll let her go right away," he was saying. Lyra stopped and pressed her back to the wall, listening intently. "No," a weaker voice said, and it was almost recognizable, but Lyra recognized it as Julian's. She felt a bit of relief. If he was up and talking, his condition must have improved, right? "Let her go first," Julian continued, "and I'll give it to you." "I am not stupid," Niall snapped. "Neither am I," Julian shot back. "Why would you let her go if you already have the treasure in your hands?" Lyra's brow tightened in a groan. "The treasure? What were they talking about? And why would you tell me where to find it once you know she is safe?" Niall questioned. "It's the most important royal treasure. Once I have it, you can never dream of getting the kingdom back. If you are still alive, would you really give it to me because of a female?" "She is my mate," Julian said. "I'd do anything for her." For a long time, Lyra had wished to hear such words from Julian. She had wanted him to treasure her, like a mate should, to treat her like the most important thing in his world. But now that it was happening, she wished he wouldn't. If that treasure was so important for the safety of the kingdom, how could he trade it for one life? Why are you hesitating then? Niall asked Julian. Tell me where the treasure is, and as soon as I have it, she'll be free. If not, I've already told you what will happen. A painful groan reached Lyra's ears, and her heart skipped a beat in response. It was undoubtedly Julian. Was he in pain? Was Niall torturing him? Or we can do it the hard way, Niall said. If you don't tell me where the treasure is, I'll bring her here and torture her while you watch, and we'll see how long you'll hold out. If you touch her, I'll never reveal the location to you, Julian warned. You'll be dead either way, Niall told him. Without the treasure or not, I'll be the king of this kingdom. This is your chance to save her, or would you let her suffer for some stupid treasure? Your mate should be your first priority, but she is not for you, is she? Niall's words were followed by a thud, then another groan. Unable to hold back anymore, Lyra stepped out of her hiding place. An uneasy feeling coursed through her as she realized Niall must not have given Julian any treatment. He is very weak, Ray told her. You have to save him right away. Yes. That was the plan, but she couldn't just barge in there. Without her abilities, she stood no chance against Niall in a fight. If he does not get treatment soon, his wolf will be too weak and might disappear. Ray warned. Lyra swallowed and nodded. I know what to do. Putting the tray and bowl down, she walked towards the cell where the voices were coming from. Just as she got close to the door, Niall walked out. When he saw her, a confused look crossed his face. He took huge steps towards her and grabbed her arm painfully. What the hell are you doing here? His eyes roved behind her, as if looking for someone. Where is Crystal? Where she belongs, Lyra replied calmly. I would like to make a deal with you. What deal? Nike asked in annoyance. Take Julian to a healer, and I'll help you disguise your identity and become the Lycan King, she told him. He scoffed. I don't need your help to become the Lycan King. Is that so? She challenged him. You experienced the power of my wolf when we fought yesterday. I can do more than what I did to you. I can control multitudes of werewolves simultaneously. I can make them think what I want them to think, and make them believe anything I want them to believe. With me by your side, no one will doubt that you are the true king. No wolf has such powers, he said. How do you think I defeated your warriors at the Red Moon Pack? Lyra asked him. With my wolf's power, I made them all submit to me. Niall scoffed again, but the look of distrust on his face had morphed into curiosity. You are not even an alpha female. How could you get anyone to submit to you? He arched his brow. Or are you also using witchcraft while acting like you loathe it? Have you ever heard of the Wolf Mother? She asked him. That is a baseless legend, he said. My wolf is one, she revealed. Like you pointed out, I am not an alpha female, so how did I manage to overpower you? How do you think I've been getting around without any of your guards capturing me? And how do I know that you'll keep your end of the deal? He asked. Assuming you are telling the truth, doesn't that mean you can control me too and overpower me? While Niall found the claim that she was the Wolf Mother to be nearly unbelievable, he could not disagree that there was something special about her. If it turned out that she was really the Wolf Mother and had such abilities, taking over the royal pack and the kingdom would be a breeze. Julian will be in your custody, she told him. If you suspect me of betraying you, you can do whatever you want with him. Niall released her arm and stepped back. He has been right. Julian was her weakness, and Niall would stop at nothing to take advantage of that fact. Fine, he said, holding his hand out for a handshake. When Lyra just looked at his hand, he tilted his head suggestively. Finally, she shook his hand. He smirked and gave her hand a squeeze. We have a deal. I would like to see him, Lyra said to Niall. Of course, Niall said, leading the way back into the cell. You'll find that I keep my promises. He is still alive. Seconds later, Lyra realized that Julian was barely alive. He looked so bad. It was a wonder he was awake and talking. "Lyra," he wheezed. One of his hands was clutching his side just below his chest. Recalling the thud and groans she had heard, Lyra wondered whether Niall had just hit him. Julian looked weak, and the wound looked worse than it had the previous night. If he went another day without treatment, he would surely die. A day might even be a stretch. Most werewolves wouldn't stand silver poisoning for so long. Julian's superior healing abilities as the Lycan King must be the only reason he was still alive. For now, saving his life was her priority. She would do whatever it took to get him a proper healer, and then she would think about the other things. "Why are you wearing this?" Julian asked when Lyra went and knelt next to him. "It is nothing," she told him. "I am all right. You need to leave the palace," he told her. "Don't worry about me. Don't worry about him. If she abandoned him, he would surely die." She shook her head. "I won't go anywhere," she told him. "You'll be okay. We'll find you a good healer, and you'll be all right." Julian's brow furrowed. "What did he tell you? Don't trust him. He'll only use you to get what he wants. Your life is the most important thing," she told him. She reached for his hand. It was cold and dry, lifeless. She couldn't even give him a gentle squeeze for fear of hurting him. It was tough seeing someone who was always so strong and powerful be so weak and vulnerable. It was like the life had been sapped out of him, and there was only a little left. Tears fell down her cheeks, unrestricted as her heart squeezed in pain. "Please go," Julian pleaded with her. Before Lyra could say anything else, Niall walked forward and lifted her by the arm. "I agreed to help him, didn't I?" he told her, turning her to face him. "So stop crying. It ruins your beautiful face." He cupped her face with his hands and wiped the tears with his thumbs. Lyra was disgusted by his closeness, but there was nothing she could do. As for Julian, he badly wanted to tear Niall's arms off their sockets. Niall leaned forward, causing Lyra to flinch and try to pull away from him. He increased the pressure of his hands on her face. "We are a team now, aren't we?" he asked her. "You'll do what I want, and I'll get him a healer." Lyra swallowed and nodded. Giving her a satisfied smile, Niall leaned in the rest of the way and pressed his lips to her skin. He kissed the trail of her tears, getting rid of them. Now, don't cry," he told her. "It doesn't look good on you." Lyra shut her eyes tight. Her stomach roiled, bile rising up her throat. She imagined unsheathing the knife and stabbing him in the neck. Would he be quick enough to stop her? If she failed, their deal would be off. He would kill Julian. She had to beat the humiliation. It was nothing compared to what Julian was going through. His life was in danger, and it was the priority. Niall finally pulled away and smiled at her. "Be good, and you won't cry anymore." "Get your filthy hands off her," Julian seethed. "I don't think she minds," Niall said with a cocky smile. "Do you mind, Lyra?" Clenching her jaw, Lyra shook her head. "Tell him," Niall urged. "It is fine," Lyra mumbled. "What did you do to her?" Julian demanded. "Don't give me that look," Niall told him. "This is all her idea." Julian looked from Niall to Lyra. "What does he mean?" "She doesn't want you to die, so she agreed to help me if I got you a healer," Niall revealed. "From now on, she is my partner. She'll help me attain the throne, and you'll get to live. You should be grateful to her." Julian shook his head, staring at Lyra. Don't trust him. He won't." His words were interrupted by a coughing fit that ended with him coughing blood. Lyra jumped forward, but Niall held her back. "Don't worry about him," he told her, wrapping an arm around her shoulder and pressing her to his side. "The healer will take care of him. He is none of your business. Do as you promised, and I'll keep him alive." "Got it." At that moment, 4 guards walked into the room carrying a stretcher between them. They placed the stretcher beside Julian, then reached for him. "Be gentle," Lyra snapped when they handled him roughly. "Can't you see he is injured?" Niall's nails dug into her upper arm, but all she could see was that Julian was having body spasms, and he seemed to have gone unconscious. Again, tears fell from her eyes. "Hold on a bit longer," she begged, wishing she could go with him. "You'll be all right soon." Niall grabbed her chin and forced her face upwards to look at him. "I am the one here with you. What are you crying about?" "Like I said, he is none of your business." Lyra's eyes fell as more tears streamed down her face. "Look at me," he ordered. She looked at him. "Yes, like that," Niall said, stroking her hair. "I am the only one you should keep your eyes on from now on." When Julian woke up, he found himself in a sterile room with white walls. It was filled with the stench of disinfectant and medicine. When he tried moving his body, he realized that his limbs were strapped to the bed, restricting his movements. He turned his head to look around, but the room was empty. He lifted his head to check his wound. His torso was wrapped with bandages, so he could not see anything. He lay back and tried to recall what had happened. The last thing he remembered was being in the dungeon with Niall and Lyra. When he recalled the deal Lyra had made with Niall, he shut his eyes in regret. A sudden sound made him open his eyes just in time to see someone walk into the room. Julian was surprised to see that it was the royal healer Spencer. "You are finally awake," Spencer said, moving to the bedside table and placing a metallic tray carrying various medical items there. "How are you feeling?" "Spencer." Julian called his name in disbelief. "Do you know who you are working for?" "My duty is to heal you," Spencer told him. "Wow," Julian said with a scoff. "When did you switch sides, or have you always been his spy?" "I did what I had to do to survive," Spencer told him. "So you betrayed your kingdom to save yourself," Julian summarized. He could not believe it. Spencer had been the royal healer for decades and had started working in that capacity while Julian was still a little boy. Julian had always seen him as part of his family. He never would have guessed that Spencer would betray the royal family so easily. "I am just a doctor," Spencer told him. "It is not like I have any royal secrets to share. My job is to save lives, and I can save them anywhere. So much for loyalty," Julian said. "My job is to tend to the king, and he is now the king," Spencer told him. "I do not choose who to serve." "You sure don't," Julian scoffed. Spencer moved from the table and reached for Julian's wrist, feeling for his pulse. Closing his eyes, he used his healing powers to feel Julian's energy flow. Finally, he produced a syringe and took a blood sample. After that, he took a pen and notebook and started making notes. Sneakily, he wrote some words on his palm. When he was done, he showed it to Julian. "We are being monitored. They can see and hear us. I have to be careful. Don't show any reaction." Casually, Spencer put the notebook down and moved to Julian's feet. Pressing them with his fingers, he asked, "Do you feel anything?" "Barely," Julian replied. "The poison had spread throughout your body." Spencer let him know, "But the antidote I gave you is working. Since you remained without treatment for a long time, it might be a while before we see a big improvement." "Why don't you just kill me?" Julian asked, going along with Spencer's performance. "It'll make your new master trust you more. I only follow His Majesty's instructions, and he has not ordered me to kill you," Spencer replied. "How obedient," Julian mocked. Through MindLink, he asked him, "What is the situation in the palace?" "It is chaotic," Spencer replied through the MindLink. "Word has gotten around about the rogue king's true identity. Many who know the truth have been executed, while others have been imprisoned. He is trying to keep the news from spreading outside the palace. No one is allowed to leave the palace, and no one from the outside is allowed to enter. If Niall was keeping such a strict eye on things, it would be hard for the truth to be known." Julian hoped that Zero, Beryl, and Anna had managed to escape the palace. If they joined with other security chiefs outside the palace, they could ambush the palace and take it back. I found out his true identity early. Unfortunately, he realized that I was onto him before I could do anything, Spencer revealed. I pretended to side with him, but he did not trust me. How did you make him trust you? Julian asked. Spencer quit inspecting Julian's legs and walked back to the table. I had to kill my father myself. Julian was so shocked that he almost exclaimed out loud. What? He said it was the only way I could prove my loyalty to him, Spencer said. I had to do it, or we would both be dead. I figured that if I am alive and close to him, I could help you defeat him. I'll never forgive myself for killing my father, but I understand, Julian told him, pained to hear what he had to go through. It was not an easy choice. Your sacrifice for the kingdom will not go to waste. Your father was a loyal male. He would not begrudge you. Yes, but he died thinking I did it because I had sided with the enemy, Spencer replied. He is your father, Julian told him. He knew you better than anyone. I am sure he understood why you did it. Spencer turned to him with another syringe. Out loud, he said, "These are antibiotics to fight infections. Your immunity is very weak, so we must be careful. Have you seen Lyra?" Julian asked through the mind link. Yes, Spencer replied. She is working with him, running the palace. Are there any signs that he is torturing her? Julian asked. No, Spencer replied. He is relying on her to hide his true identity. Julian was relieved to hear that. Even though Lyra was forced to serve Niall, she was not being mistreated or wasting away in a dungeon. Julian trusted her. He knew that she would not just give in to Niall. Like Spencer, by being close to him, she would be better placed to find the perfect moment to strike. Since Julian could not do anything about it, and she had been stubborn and refused to leave the palace when she had the chance. He could only hope that she would not get in trouble before she had a chance to turn on Niall. I'll hide my recovery progress, Julian told Spencer. Pretend that I am still weak for another couple of weeks. This should give me enough time to regain all my strength so that I can strike him once and for all. The wait would be agony, but when he finally regained his strength and power, he would kill Niall and get his kingdom and mate back. Lyra sighed for the umpteenth time as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. She reached for the hem of her skirt and tugged, but it had reached its full length, somewhere several inches above the middle of her thighs. She huffed in annoyance at the ridiculousness of the situation. Niall had come out of nowhere and announced that they were going shopping and took the liberty of choosing Lyra's outfit. He had chosen an extremely short skirt paired with a soft cashmere sweater. The outfit might have been perfect for a night out, but why on earth would she wear like this to go shopping? Forget a night out. The skirt was way too short for her liking. She felt like she would be flashing her bottom with every step she took. He had refused her attempts to choose a different outfit, so she was stuck with this, slipping her feet into a pair of stilettos yet, another poor choice for the occasion. She left her room and went downstairs. She found Niall and Crystal in the foyer. Crystal gave her the stink eye, her eyes scanning her from foot to head. Why does she have to come with us? She asked Niall, her displeasure clear in her voice. I thought this was going to be just us two spending time alone together. Lyra has been helping me a lot, Niall said, and I want to thank her. Looking at Lyra, who had stopped a few feet from them, he said, You can buy anything you want. It is on me. Crystal sneered. She is your servant. Why do you have to reward her? She should be thankful that you have given her good living conditions when she belongs in the dungeons. I really don't want anything, Lyra said, making one last effort to get out of the trip. You two can go without me. See, Crystal told Niall. She doesn't want to go. Why should we take her? Besides, look at the way she is dressed. Do you think you are going to a brothel? Lyra fought the urge to tug her skirt downwards. She looks gorgeous, Niall said, his eyes fixed on Lyra's thighs. Walking away from Crystal, he approached Lyra. He reached for her hand and put her wrist to his lips, his eyes meeting hers. You are coming with us. A female like you should have all the best things. Whether it is shoes or clothes or jewelry, I'll pay for whatever you want. Come on, the driver is waiting. He did not wait for her response as he started towards the exit, still holding her hand. Crystal followed behind them, glaring at their joined hands. When they got to the car, Niall opened the back door for Lyra and ushered her in. She is riding with us, Crystal demanded, mortified. Looking around, she saw that there was no other car waiting. I will not sit with her. You'll sit up front with the driver, Niall told her before getting into the back seat alongside Lyra. Crystal's mouth fell open, not believing what was happening. She glared through the tinted back window for a few seconds, contemplating not entering the car at all. In the end, she got into the passenger seat, fuming. When they got to the mall, Crystal steered Niall towards a jewelry shop, and Lyra followed behind them. Moments later, Crystal was fawning over a pair of diamond earrings. These are so beautiful, she marveled, her eyes glinting with desire. She hooked her arm around Niall's. Babe, wouldn't these look so good on me? Lyra peeked at the price tag and blinked when she saw that the earrings cost $50,000. Would you like to see our secret collection? The shop attendant asked Crystal. This pair is available to everyone, but our secret collection is only preserved for our VIPs. We have several pieces that you'll not find anywhere else. Of course, Crystal said, her eyes glinting further. I would like to see the collection. Lyra could only wonder how much the jewelry in the secret collection would cost, if the ones in the general display went for 5 figures. Help me choose, Crystal told Niall, dragging him towards the private room the shop attendant was heading towards. Choose whatever you want, Niall told Lyra. I'll pay. Lyra nodded and watched with great relief as the two of them disappeared into the private room. Wasting no time, she left the shop and wandered around the mall. She came across an antique shop and decided to pass the time looking at the stuff inside. It had everything from everyday household items to weapons that were claimed to have been used by Lycan kings as far back as 800 years ago. She ended up at an ancient books section. It was filled with books that looked like they had been through centuries of life. Some of them were encased in glass boxes to protect them since they were on the verge of falling apart. Others were partly damaged, but that didn't make them any cheaper. Some were noted to be the only remaining copy. Others were termed to be extremely rare, while others were first editions. One book caught her attention. Even though it looked quite old, it was in good condition. Looking through it, she realized it was a book about rogues. It contained a detailed history narrating where rogues came from and how their conflict with the Lycan kingdom developed over the centuries. It piqued Lyra's interest. But one look at the price tag, a staggering 300 grand, stifled her excitement. Do you like it? Niall's voice came from behind her just as she placed the book back to its slot. Startled by his sudden appearance, Lyra turned around. I didn't know you were here. Have you found anything you want? He asked her. Lyra looked around. Everything in the shop was so expensive that she hadn't even considered getting anything. She wasn't paying, but she wasn't exactly lining up to receive anything from Niall. Before Lyra could say anything, Crystal pushed past her and reached for the book. Oh my goddess, I've been looking for this edition since forever. I'll even pay double for it. Ignoring her, Lyra moved aside. I saw a few interesting things, she said to Niall. I can choose one. Crystal asked the shop attendant to prepare the book and started looking at other items. Every time Lyra showed the slightest interest in something, she jumped in and said that it was what she wanted. Lyra watched in silent amusement as Crystal grabbed a $70,000 vase from an ancient human kingdom, a carpet for 25 grand, and a table for 100 grand. But while Laura asked the shop attendant the price for some of the things that weren't tagged, Crystal did not bother. Finally, my suite can feel like home, Crystal said in satisfaction, as the three of them sat in a private lounge waiting for the shop attendants to finalize the sale. Fit for a queen. Are you sure you don't want anything here? Niall asked Lyra, who had not picked anything. I'll look in other shops, she told him. A shop attendant walked into the room to show Crystal the bill. On seeing the amount, Crystal scoffed. $750,000. She read ridiculously. What kind of calculation is this? This is the total amount of everything you ordered, the attendant said. Those small things? Crystal complained. Scrutinizing the bill, she scoffed. A dinner set for $45,000. Did you change the prices because you saw that I have money? No, ma'am. That is the original price, the attendant said. We provided the price information for everything you picked. And, as you can see, the book makes up most of the bulk. Of course, Crystal had not been paying attention to the prices. She had picked several trinkets, assuming they did not cost much. In the end, she ended up with a bill of almost $1 million. She had already paid $400,000 for a diamond necklace. If she paid that much for the antiques, she would have spent over $1 million. Before, she could have easily spent all that money without batting an eyelash. But after what happened to her pack, she did not have that kind of money to burn. Turning to Niall, she smiled at him. Babe, you'll pay the bill, right? You said I could get anything I want. When did I say that? Niall asked, giving her a blank look. She blinked. What do you mean? You chose them yourself, Niall told her. Pay for them. What does it have to do with me? Ma'am, will you be taking them, or shall we return everything? The shop attendant asked. No, Crystal snapped. She was flustered at Niall's response, but she did not want to make a scene in front of the attendant. I'll use my cards, but take out the book. It is not the edition I wanted anyway. All right, the shop attendant said. Crystal produced her card and the attendant proceeded to process the sale. However, the card was not enough to pay for everything, and Crystal had to use her other 2 cards. In the end, she maxed them all out. I'll take the book, Lyra said finally, barely keeping a grin off her face. She had intentionally spurred Crystal to buy useless luxury items to waste her money so she could forget about the book. When Niall produced his card to pay for the book, Crystal was practically seething. What is the meaning of this? Crystal demanded as soon as the shop attendant left the room. Why would you pay that much for her but refuse to pay mine? I invited her to go shopping, Niall replied coolly, but I don't remember inviting you. I also did not promise to pay for your stuff at any time. What? Crystal screeched. I am your partner. How can you treat me like this, especially in front of her? You did not even punish her for attacking me that day and locking me in the secret chamber. Aren't you supposed to be on my side? What does that have to do with this? Niall asked, losing his cool. I don't have to explain what I do to you. Crystal scoffed. So then, you are just going to humiliate me? Just because we work together does not mean you are in control of me, Niall told her. It is not in your place to tell me what to do. Control! She echoed ridiculously. We are in this together, but it seems you have forgotten that. You did not even consult me when you started working with her. This was not what we agreed on when we started. I was supposed to be in charge of her, but that is not what is happening. I am done standing by and letting you do whatever you want. Niall narrowed his eyes and stepped closer to her. Do you think I need you to take over this kingdom? Crystal blinked and stuttered. What? I don't, Niall told her. You have nothing to offer. Are you crazy? Crystal yelled. My pack is the most powerful outside of the royal pack. Anyone would want me on their side. If you think you can take over without my support, you are dreaming. Powerful. Niall laughed sarcastically. Your family lost everything when your father was executed. If I wanted to take over your little pack, I would do it in a snap without your permission, and there is nothing you could do about it. Don't get this twisted, sweetheart. You are the one who needs me to become queen, not the other way around. If I cast you out right now, you'll get nothing. Don't push me. Crystal glared at him with red-hot anger, her chest heaving with her heavy breathing. Her face felt as red as it looked, and her body was trembling with rage. You'll be sorry, she snapped. Turning around, she stomped out of the room, banging the door shut behind her. Listening to them, Lyra couldn't help smiling. Trouble in paradise, if their alliance was shaky. It worked for her. She knew firsthand how proud and vengeful Crystal could be. If Niall kept pushing her like that, Crystal would eventually snap and turn against him. After Crystal left, Niall walked to Lyra. Is there anything else you want? No, she told him, giving him a smile. The book is more than enough. If you insist, he said. Let's go. Crystal was nowhere to be seen as the two of them got in the car for the ride back to the palace. As soon as she was seated, Lyra unwrapped the book and opened it. She figured that if she knew more about the origin of the rogues, she would know how to deal with them. The conflict between the kingdom and the rogues has been going on for centuries, and she wondered whether it was possible to stop it once and for all. Knowing what had started it all could be key to finding a lasting solution. The first several minutes of the ride went by in silence. Lyra was reading the book, while Niall was on his phone. Even though she was not paying attention to him, she could tell that he was in a bad mood. Had Crystal touched a nerve, Lyra hoped that the entire ride would be as peaceful, but sooner than later, Niall put his phone away. To his displeasure, she remained engrossed in the book, paying him no attention. How did you end up in the palace? He asked her, wanting to start a conversation. I've heard a lot of rumors, but I'd like to hear it from you. There is not a lot to tell, Lyra replied, semi-distracted. I still want to hear it, Niall insisted. My pack was wiped out by a mysterious illness, and the Red Moon Pack Alpha saved me, she told him. After a few years, he sent me to the palace. That is how I ended up here. That is not the entire story. Is it? Niall asked. The rest is not important, she replied, dismissively. Niall was not used to being disregarded so casually, and it irked him. Just because he had allowed her to live a normal life in the palace, did she think they were now equals? He had arranged this shopping trip for her, but she acted like he was bothering her, like she would rather be somewhere else. He was not having any more of it. Without warning, he grabbed the book and tossed it to the floor. Lyra's surprised gasp was cut short when he grabbed her by the waist and pulled her onto his lap. Am I bothering you? He growled. No, she answered instantly, her eyes widening as if she was just realizing how pissed off he was. Yeah. Why act like I am bothering you, then? When I ask you a question, you should answer me properly. Or did you forget our deal? No, Lyra denied, shaking her head. If you have a problem, tell me now and our deal will be off. Otherwise, don't keep acting like I am forcing you. I am sorry, Lyra apologized, realizing she was treading on thin ice. I was simply engrossed in the book. Is that so? I suggested the deal myself, she said. Why would I back out? Why did you refuse my gifts? He asked. Isn't the book worth 100 gifts? She asked him. It is very expensive, and it is the only thing I saw that I liked. Niall stared at her silently for a while, as if trying to find any deception in her words. Finally, he warned. If you try to play mind games with me, you'll never see Julian again. Do you understand? I know, she told him. Niall placed a hand on her thigh and dragged it upwards, sneaking it beneath her skirt. Lyra's first instinct was to push him away, but she knew better. Do you want to join him? He asked, his hand drifting towards the inside of her thighs. Number. I don't believe you, he accused. Lyra swallowed. She knew he was goading her. As long as you keep your end of the deal, I'll do whatever you want, she told him. So why does it feel like I am forcing you? he asked her. Did you make this deal to save your mate, or to find an opening to attack me? Lyra placed her hand around his neck and leaned towards him, then pressed her lips to his. She swallowed her revulsion as he kissed her, his hand rubbing the insides of her thighs. Her only goal was to make him think she had given up everything in order to help Julian. Good, he told her when he pulled back. Together we can do great things. As long as you don't play games with me, I won't hurt you. You belong to me now, so it'll be better for everyone if you stop fighting it, mate. Lyra mustered up a smile as she nodded. To her relief, he let her go, allowing her to sit back down. Reaching for the book, she placed it on her lap but did not open it. I am right here. Why don't you ask me about rogues? Niall asked her. I know so much more than you can find in any book.